If you can't afford to feed your kids, that is a very, very, very real indeed. Over the weekend, we discovered that Boris Johnson had phoned Marcus Rashford, the footballer, leading the campaign for there to be free school meal vouchers available to the poorest children in the country during the holidays. I wanted them for half term last week and the Christmas holidays and the rest of the time, anytime people are on lockdown. But he rang them on Saturday night to tell them that ministers are going to spend more than £400 million to support poor children and their families in England. It's been billed as yet another shambolic U-turn. But was it? Well, let's talk to Alfie Stirling. He's chief economist at the New Economics Foundation. Good morning to you, Alfie.
Good morning.
Good morning. We spoke to George Eustace, the Environment Secretary, about half an hour ago. He said it's not a U-turn. The government was always spending this money. This is the sort of sum they were talking about, but it's being billed as a U-turn in the papers. Is it one?
Well, I mean, the 400 million package had lots of different elements in it, of which part was commitment now to pay for activities and food for children during the school holidays. And that bit, I think, quite clearly is a U-turn, because government had previously been quite clear they weren't going to do that for Christmas, for the half term next year and for Easter. But that is exactly what's contained in this package. But I don't really want to get hung up on whether it's a U-turn or not, because the bottom line is it's a really good intervention and it's going to mean a lot for a lot of children.
But did the government have anything fair to say? And a lot of Tory MPs, an awful lot of voters would agree when they said, look, this isn't about giving people an extra 15 quid voucher for each child who would normally get free school meals during the holidays. That's not a solution to the problem. The solution really is, helping these families deal with, whatever their money worries are, making sure children are fed. And I suppose that really was, I suppose, them saying, we don't think it's the amount of money. We think it's what the parents are doing with their money, their finances, their general budgeting, etc., etc. Is that a fair thing for the government to say?
Well, actually, I didn't hear many proponents on either side of the argument talking about people's ability or decisions through budgeting. Actually, what I heard was two things that were quite interesting. One was, that it's not controversial in terms of the objectives of this, which is that children should not go hungry in one of the richest economies in the world. The Prime Minister said as much himself. But also the argument, which again came from the Prime Minister, which was that you can't just solve this with sticking plasters and vouchers during the school holidays. You also have to look at some of the fundamental policy infrastructure like universal credit. But this is where I deviate a bit from what you were saying there, Julia, because I think actually that the amount is the crucial bit there. I mean, if you look at universal credit, it's the fifth weakest safety net out of any advanced economy. So it's a very low replacement rate on average. That means if you lose work, you drop down to a very low percentage of your in-work earnings, far, far lower compared to other countries. And that's a key problem for this country right now. It's a problem at any time, but particularly going into a pandemic.
So the argument there is that there isn't enough money. I mean, I've been asking these questions over the last few weeks when this has been, actually months this has been discussed, which is the issue that in any normal holiday time, and bearing in mind universal credit has gone up by £20 and that's going to continue a week, in any normal time, are the families on the lowest benefits, are they unable to feed their kids adequately? Are they struggling? Are they getting into debt to buy food? In which case, in a civilized society, in a rich economy like ours, we should be making sure they have got enough money for the basics. And I'm sorry, if you don't think people being able to feed their children properly isn't basic, then frankly, get a heart. Or is it they've got enough money and millions of parents on universal credit are able to feed their children? Some aren't, and that may be an issue that's got, frankly, very little to do with how much money's coming in. It's to do with having mental health problems. It's to do with having alcohol addiction, drug addiction, just living a chaotic life for whatever reason. Now, that doesn't mean we should accept the kids going hungry, but then is a voucher the solution to that problem? Where do you stand on all of that?
So there's very clear evidence that this is a resource problem, not a behavioural problem. So the government's own survey, the Households Below Average Income survey that's run by the Department of Work and Pensions, shows that in normal times, outside of a pandemic, you have about 700,000 children living in severe deprivation. So that's a category below deprivation, and it means that the household does not have the resources to meet basics of living. So that's 700,000 in normal times outside of pandemic. We've obviously seen another 1.5 million people move on to universal credit as a result of losing their work, also seeing a drop in income, either because they're self-employed or because they were on minimum wage and then furloughed at 80%. So that number will now be a lot higher. So, this is why I think that the conversation about behaviour it really is a distraction, because we definitely have a verifiable, evidence-based block of families in one of the richest economies in the world that do not have the resources in place to make ends meet.